We're live and welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for tuning in to CAD Live, which is my newly branded 3 times a week stream on this wonderful platform of YouTube. And today I'm joined by none other than Mr. Jack Napier. How are you, sir?
Doing very well. How have you been yourself?
Mate, not too bad. Well, actually, I tell a lie. I've been a little bit under the weather, actually, the last couple of days. So I've been trying to take it easy. I've been doing a bit of world-class live streaming in the afternoon, and in the morning I've been sort of like trying to sort of stay in bed for a bit longer, just chilling a little bit because I feel like a bit of man flu coming on.
Oh God, man flu.
I don't think it's the dreaded virus, but I think it is a little bit of man flu. So I've been trying to just take it easy and hopefully try and knock it on the head.
Let's hope you're fine at the end. I think you will.
Well, you know me, Jack, and you know that I have a very rigorous routine of lifting that I do every week. And unfortunately, the last couple of yesterday and today, I haven't actually been able to do the lifting that I would have wanted to do.
You haven't been able to lift? You've probably been dumped by all the girls you've ever met.
Very likely. I didn't even have a cold shower, actually. I kind of had a warm bath earlier. That's how bad things have got, guys.
You did have black coffee, right?
I did actually have black coffee, yeah.
Okay,
yeah, that's right. Although, so, that probably makes up for it. But anyway, enough of that. So, listen, what we're talking about today, and thanks ever so much for coming on, because I know you've had a really busy day, and I know you've got to go out later and kick some ass with some kickboxing. So thanks for coming along. What we're going to be doing today is doing a brief quasi-seminar, really, on how to talk to girls. And, most importantly, how to not run out of things to say. So just to give the guys, before we get into it, what we'll do, we'll be on for about an hour, maybe less than an hour, fairly short one today, because we want this to be kind of bite-sized and a bit more of a lesson format, if you like, so it's actionable. But it seems to me, and I don't know, Jack, if you've experienced this, but it seems to me that for many of us, the difficulty with going and talking to a girl is not so much the opener. I mean, that can be difficult for guys who've never done it and they've got very low confidence. But in general, it's not so much going over to the girl and saying, hey, hi, I'm Troy. It's not that so much. It's more like, what the hell do I say next?
Yep, pretty much. I have been in the situation where I saw a girl, kind of fancied her, opened her, and after that was just I was just dumbfounded.
Yeah.
Okay, now what? Like, we're at a beach. So you like beaches? That's stupid. But then you get analysis paralysis, because in these cases, it's better to get the conversation going with whatever instead of not saying anything at all, I think. Just try to ramble a bit, get her to invest, but don't fall silent. That's the worst thing you can do.
Exactly, because here's the thing. The problem is when you open the conversation, and you should be opening the conversation, guys, because your raison d'etre is to go out there and create opportunities for yourself, which is to say go out and talk to different women to hopefully bring them into your life. Because you've opened the conversation, the onus is then on you to keep the thing going, at least in the initial stages. Because if you think about it, why should she? Do you know what I mean? Why should you just turn up and go, hey, hi, and then expect her to do the work? It's kind of like, it doesn't make any sense.
It only works in certain instances. And this is mostly when the girl keeps checking you out. But you know this, like, girls give you the IOIs, the indicators of interest, and it is your job as a man to act upon them. Yet, again, you open her. And in some cases, when you actually point out to her, like, hey, I am noticing you giving me indicators of interest, or I saw you watching, she usually gets the hint and starts talking to you a bit more. Because I've had these years ago, this girl was like checking me out, and I walked up to her and I asked her, like, are you going to look at me all night or buy me a drink? What's this all about? She just started laughing and telling me things about her and things like that. And that's when you get a more natural flowing state of a conversation. You acknowledge the fact that, yes, I know why you're looking at me. Let's not beat around the bush too much. because she feels more comfortable, I noticed.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a really, really good method to use. But like you say, that is very much predicated on her giving you some sort of a signal first. Like if she's into you from the off, and that happens, obviously to gentlemen such as ourselves, it happens all the time. If you're not as aesthetically blessed as myself and Mr. Napier, it maybe it's less of a thing. But yeah, that happens from time to time. And then it's relatively easy because, it's kind of like she's looking at you, you're looking at her. She knows that you're in, she's interested, she knows you're interested, and you can kind of get the vibe going pretty easily. But oftentimes, it's not quite as clear cut as that. And as well, you don't really want to be just relying on indicators of interest, because otherwise you're kind of waiting to be chosen.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It is my favorable, how do I mention that? My favorite category of approaching, like when she's into you, it makes it so much easier, and you don't have to deal with the sort of cold approaching, higher chances of rejection. But in some cases, or in most actually, it is the situation where she hasn't noticed you, or she just noticed you, and you have already been eyeing her a bit. But then it's mostly up to you.
Well, yeah, look, Jack, with none of the H word, you are an extremely beautiful man, and doubtless, Tom Torero was saying that you look a bit like Johnny Depp, which obviously there is that resemblance there. So obviously, Jack, you're probably walking down the street, and girls are probably just like prostrating themselves or just like gazing in awe kind of thing as you walk down the street. But obviously, yeah, exactly. But obviously, when you get to my advanced years, that's not always happening as much, and it's not, for most of us, most of the time, that's happening a bit, but it's not happening all the time. So it's that balance that guys have got to get between, okay, I'm going to get some of that, and of course I need to capitalize on that, but also, I want to be going out and actually just starting conversations with girls who aren't looking at me. And because, for myself, I've done that many times. Like I started a conversation with a girl at a bus stop many years ago in East London, which was, back in my early days of day game. And that girl hadn't even looked at me, hadn't noticed me, whatever. Started talking to her, got her phone number. And she ended, after backwards and forwards for a bit, she ended up being my girlfriend for like 2 years. So that whole relationship wouldn't have come about if I'd have just relied on an indicator of interest, because there wasn't one. So, so it's in those situations. So the guy's walking up to the girl and he's sort of saying, hi, you look really nice, or whatever he's going to open with. And the opener doesn't really matter too much. It could be like, where's Starbucks? It could be like, I saw you look cute. It could be like, oh, have you noticed that funny guy over the street over there? What do you think about that? It could be kind of almost anything, really, circumstantial or an observation about her or a compliment, whatever. Anyway, you've opened the conversation, and then what do you do then? And it's like, how do you keep things going? And this is really the big problem that everybody's got. So I've got some tips that I want to just now run past you, or some, maybe not even tips, but just sort of like ideas about this area that I just want to share now. And I'll run them past you, just see what you think of them, okay? And see how you think this would work. And by the way, guys, if you've got any questions, please do, for myself or for Jack, about this or any other element really of dating and game and looking like Johnny Depp, if you want, whatever.
Please you should see me with my glasses, really.
Okay. Is it more like is it less Depp and more sort of Ed Norton in Fight Club?
No. It really is more Deppish. And just for the record, unfortunately, I don't really have women walking up to me daily. Unfortunately.
They're probably too intimidated. They're probably just there. They're thinking, I wish I could just walk up to that guy, but I don't have the confidence. Maybe there's a YouTube channel for them, and they can.
We wish. Bro.
Yeah. But anyway, put your questions in the chat, and we will get to them in a little bit. But okay, so conversation skills, and it's a massive, massive area. There's loads and loads of things that could be said about this. Todd V actually pointed out that you've been engaging in conversation since you first learned to talk, right? So, that's years and years of experience of doing this. And so in a brief online video, it's going to be very hard to say anything earth-shattering that's going to completely change that programming, because you've been doing it for so long and there's so many nuances to all of this. But there are a few things to bear in mind. And the first thing really is a slightly hippie-ish, almost, dare I say, sort of Stedman-esque kind of a thing, really, which is remaining present in the interaction. And what I mean by that is basically this, because you know what it's like with conversations, don't you? And this is with girls, but with guys, whatever. There is a tendency, particularly if you're a little bit nervous, to sort of be like, you are just there and you're kind of half listening to what they're saying, but you are also just waiting for your opportunity to speak, or you're thinking like, oh shit, what am I going to say next in order to fill the silence, so there isn't like an awkward gap. So you're not really focused on what she's saying or her presence in the conversation. And as hippie-ish as it sounds, the best conversations you can have, and this is probably why, by the way, when people are drunk or they're using substances or whatever, the conversations flow a bit better. Because Jack, you've disappeared. I hope you're still alive. Because I think Jack's just had to go and answer a call of nature. So we'll carry on. So there's this situation where you have to just basically keep the flow. And, the danger is that you don't really listen to her. You're not really taking what she's saying. And that means you're very disjointed from the conversation, and that immediately is going to put up barriers between you and her. What do you think about that? It's a bit esoteric, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Thank you.
And a big thing that guys tend to think about when they hit up a girl is, what would others think of me? Like,
yes.
Let's say you do a day game approach, yet you worry about your surroundings. Even though most of the people walking by won't even remember you, are not even paying attention to what you're saying to a particular girl, and are most of the time not even noticing your approaching. Yet, for a lot of guys, it all gets up in their head. They're not in the moment. They're not with the girl, so to say. They're focusing more on all the external things that are going on.
Yes, exactly. So you're not really there present, and so that immediately is a problem, because the best conversations are those where both of you are present and you're vibing off one another. So as hard as it is, she said, as hard as it may be, you have to try to let go of trying to control everything. You have to try and let go of your fear of like, oh, if I don't think of something amazing to say now, I'm going to look like an idiot and blah, blah, blah. You've got to, as Dan says, you've got to focus on what is in front of you.
Especially with the hook. And I know in day game, it's
is that Captain Hook?
I wish. No, but it's mostly used in getting her to hook on you, on what you're saying, but you have to do the same thing. Like, what is she saying? So you walk up to a bird and you say, well, I think you look absolutely pretty, but there's something off about you. You must be an art student. And then she tells you what she's actually studying. And then instead of you going on about her clothing or her hair color or whatever, stay to the subject. She just told you something. Hook in on that. What did she tell you about herself? Ask more about that. Instead of trying to think of something clever to say, actually go into the topic she just gave you.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that in a minute. So point number 2. Okay, so after the general sort of be present, which you should always seek to be anyway, the second thing is a bit more specific. And this is about the type of conversational gambits you throw out there. And fundamentally, you've got 2 types of conversational gambit. You've got closed loops and open loops, right? And so closed loops are basically, you say something and there is nothing else really that can be added to it. And this is actually another way of saying open questions versus closed questions, really. It's kind of a similar sort of concept. So an open loop is when there is something that she could potentially come back to. and sort of like and would have cause to respond to in some sort of a way, versus a closed loop where you've kind of said everything that needs to be said, and so she doesn't need to do anything, or the person that you're corresponding with doesn't need to really do anything. They just say, okay, right, that's great, cheers, and then move on. Okay, so, and it's like you said, you always want to be trying to create like open loops with your conversation. So an example of that is, rather than just walking up to her, say it's in the club, and you just walk up to her and you say, hey, you're really cute, then it's kind of a closed loop, because she could just say, oh, thanks. And then
the dreaded thanks. Like, oof.
Yeah, nice to meet you. And then she could walk off and, whatever. And so that's it. So there's no real, I mean, she might be flattered. She might say, oh, no, nice of you to say that or whatever. But, and again, if she's into you, and of course, this is the caveat, because this is the thing that changes all of these things. If she's into you, then she might well use that as a reason to, she might then say, oh, so what are you up to tonight? What are you doing here? Who are you with? Or something like that. But if that initial kind of like, if she's a maybe girl, she might just go, whatever, right? Yeah, thanks. And then just walk off. Okay. So a far better strategy is to make sure that the loops are open in the conversation. So you might say something like, hey, you look cute, but there's something kind of crazy about you. And then, and then she's going to go, well, hang on, what do you mean? Like, and it's sort of like it adds a little bit more intrigue into it, because on the one hand, you've said that something complimentary about her, something nice about her, but on the other hand, you've sort of pulled it back and you've thrown this curveball into the thing, which is that she looks a little bit crazy. So, and she might not bite with that. She might still say, I'm not, don't worry. Anyway, I've got to go meet my friends. Bye.
Oh, yeah.
But there's more of a chance that if you throw that curveball in, she's going to have more reason to hang around. So she might say, well, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm crazy? What are you talking about? And, and then things are starting to move forwards. Do you see what I mean?
Oh, I absolutely know what you mean. I just love that canned opener of, so other than your looks, what have you got going on in your life? You immediately, like, you acknowledge that she looks good, but you deflate the situation a bit. So, okay, you're hot, but what else?
Yeah, exactly. And come on, impress me. Come on.
Yeah. And when you're lucky, you have a girl who knows how to banter, which is rare these days, in my honest opinion. A girl who can banter back and forth. When she knows how to do that, you get an actually nice and back and forth conversation, energetic back and forth conversation. And what you just mentioned, like, you look cute, but I think you could use a couple of more drinks. Or maybe the opposite of that. You look cute, but I think you just had a couple too much to drink. Am I right? Things like that. Play with it a bit.
Well, you look cute, but you look like a drunken old slattern.
I don't know if we go that far, but
yeah, maybe not that one. Don't use that one. Don't use that one, guys. Don't try that at home. But no, I mean, but it's not even necessarily. And again, Todd V talks about this, and he says that it's often useful to have a slightly negative taint to the thing that you're saying, because there's more for her to respond to. And this is where the dreaded idea of like negs comes in, like negging, kind of thing. And negging was rightly a technique that was that is to say, saying something uncomplimentary about the girl that you're interacting with in order to create an imbalance or a reaction or something. And that was kind of rightly maligned, and it's not a very fashionable thing to talk about now. And it's not something I particularly recommend. But the fact remains that in order to add frisson to an interaction, it is helpful when you say things that are slightly negative. I mean, in a jokey, teasing way, not like, not in some insulting way, but it just gives her more to respond to.
It's push-pull, which in my opinion makes more sense when you say pull-push, if you know what I mean. Like, you pull her in by making a compliment and you push her away a bit by flipping the script.
Yes.
So you don't have to necessarily call it a nag or make a slightly negative remark. It's more like you pull them in and you push them back a bit.
Yeah.
You get that conflicting stage where she's like, wait, he just called me cute, but he's not sure about me. Why is he not sure about me? He just said I look cute. What is this?
Yes, exactly. And remember as well, and this is where this stuff, when this is applied to dating, this is where it does differ somewhat to interactions with, say, other guys or networking and things, because well, actually, although even saying that, there is also teasing and banter between guys as well.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
so actually, it does kind of cross over. But remember our mutual friend and associate Tom Serrero has always said, attraction is created through friction. Okay, it's not created through you two just getting on really well and agreeing on everything. That's not where the attraction lies. The attraction is created through friction. So in order to create that friction, you sometimes have to throw in a couple of little kind of curveballs that are going to just shake things up a little bit, right?
I mean, you're not looking for a sister and brother relationship. You don't want a family thing, although not all families get along very well, but I digress. You don't want you don't want to be her best friend or whatever. You want to be her lover, and the lover knows how to play with her and play with her, as Rolo likes to say. But this is where a lot of guys, I don't know, they're afraid to do it or anything. They're afraid to rock the boat.
Yes.
You need to find a certain love for rocking that boat, have enjoyment in shaking things up a bit. I mean, especially when you're in a relationship. We're talking about pickup right now, but this is a great thing to implement when you have an LTR or even in marriage. I mean, these standard questions. Do I look fat in this? Not more than usual. You should see their reaction, because you're not admitting they look fat, but you're not saying they're thin either. You're just saying not more than usual. But you have to say it with this shit-eating grin. You should see the reaction. It's lovely. It's absolutely lovely.
Again, try this at your own risk, viewers. But
you can just see the hamster spinning. Like, what does he mean by that? What? Doesn't he find me attractive anymore? And you just sit there with a shit-eating grin, like, okay, you can figure this one out. Go ahead.
Indeed. So we're going to talk a bit more about spicing it up in a second, because that's one of my next points. But the fourth point, and this again is really applicable to sort of first meetings, like a daytime approach or a nighttime approach or whatever. And again, it's kind of obvious, but really important, is to really personalize it. Okay, so you've got to look at her. You've got to look at the woman in front of you, what she's wearing, her vibe, the way she speaks, the way she moves, her style, all of these different things. And you've got to try and pinpoint things specifically about her that are interesting to you. And you've got to use those as your material. Do you know what I mean? Because as much as it's been said, girls like a player and they like a guy who's, out and about and perhaps has the impression that he talks to a lot of different ladies and all the rest of it, that's fine. But you've also, at the same time, got to kind of give the impression that there is something special about her, not in a butt-kissing way, but it's sort of like, I am a high-value guy. I'm not just going to stop and talk to any random girl. Do you know what I mean? Who just because she happens to be attractive. I've stopped to talk about you because, yes, you are attractive, but also I can see from the fact that you're wearing that like velvet coat with that sort of floral shirt and, a little Gucci necklace or whatever it is, and that's not a euphemism, by the way, there's just something kind of artistic about you, and I find that really appealing. You want to pull out the things that are about her that are sort of specific to her in order to really bring home the fact that that's why you are talking to her.
But that's when you get the rapport stage, isn't it? Like, you're noticing something she has. And I used to go to a lot of rock concerts. And of course, everybody is wearing the shirt of the band. So it's a bit of a tough one. But you just go up and you say, how many times have you seen them before? Is this your first time here seeing this band or blah, blah, blah? And then you get an instant thing to talk about. And she knows why you opened her. She absolutely does. So you just go off on that. And as you just mentioned, like, how do you spice that up? Well, we'll wait for when we get there. But you need a topic. And I just mentioned it before, like, get that hook point in a bit. Like, she gives you a subject or you give it a subject, and or a topic. Sorry, you give it a topic, she gives it a topic, and you have something to actually talk about instead of some random stranger just saying, well, you look cute. Go on, have a conversation with me.
Exactly. But I think it is important to try to personalize it a bit. I mean, obviously, if you're at a Metallica concert and everyone's wearing a Metallica concert t-shirt, then that's a little bit of a problem. Yeah. Because, nice Metallica t-shirt that you're wearing, like all these other 20,000 people. But ideally, you want to pull out something because here's the thing. I mean, like, there are many different women that one could potentially be attracted to for just very basic, physical reasons. However, there are some women that we are more drawn to than others, and those reasons become a little bit more personal. Now, I personally, I like girls who are stylish. I like girls who are sort of quite artistic sometimes, or creative, or a little bit edgy, a little bit different. I would favor a girl like that over somebody who's just really basic bitch, as they say. Do you know what I mean? So
the Uggs and pumpkin spice lattes.
Yeah, exactly. I keep pulling my headphones out with excitement. I have to stop doing that. So yeah, I mean, so it then helps to sort of pinpoint when you even when you go in, and this isn't really, as I say, kissing her butt. This is just, it's kind of finding something to talk about, really, because you could go in and say, oh, I noticed you've got this very creative air about you because of X, Y, and Z. That makes me think perhaps you are an artist, or perhaps you are a this or that. Perhaps you are a designer. Am I right? Am I getting warm? Do you know what I mean? And then not only are you signaling that there's something specific about her that made you want to interact with her, which is good, but also you're then able to go into a little bit of cold reading. Like, you're able to then start to make some assumptions about her, which then gives you more material to work on.
Agree. And there's one thing I noticed, and I put it into words a while back. It's mostly about assumptions, not necessarily questions, if you know what I mean. You make a sort of an assumption, and you give her the opportunity to prove you wrong or right. Now, disclaimer, don't make too horrible of assumptions. But as Troy just mentioned, like, you look artistic. Am I right? Things like that. What do you notice about her? And throw that out there. Throw the assumption you made out there and ask if you are right to make that assumption.
Yes, exactly. So, and yeah, you're right. I mean, assumptions, really important. And a good thing to do is to ground those assumptions in something that you're into. Because again, an important thing here is that you don't really want to come across as though you're just randomly talking to every single girl in the place. I mean, maybe that is what you're doing, but you don't want to come across like that. You want to because remember the whole thing about qualification, which is a really important part of game. Remember the fact that it's attractive if you present yourself as a high quality man who's saving the West, but in between saving the West is he wants to interact with girls who are also of a certain quality. You don't want to,
quality.
Yeah. You don't want to look like some bloke who's just like rocking out to anything, any port in the storm kind of thing. Because that marks you down in her view as being just kind of desperate or just a pathetic sort of player. And that's not the vibe you want to go for.
Which, by the way, it could be a nice shit test in some cases. The whole, I bet you say that to all the girls, to which you respond, no, only the blondes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, it's a fine line, because you could pull it back. If she says, I bet you, how many girls have you said that to tonight? You could say, only 325, but I just thought I'd give it another shot with you. I mean, you can joke around with it, but I think fundamentally, you don't want to be seen as a guy who's just randomly trying it on with everybody, because that's just not. It's not high value behavior.
You're not approaching 10 women in 1 hour in the same bar.
Exactly.
Somebody's going to notice, and you're probably going to get kicked out.
Exactly. So, bring it on to the next point. Actually, I might swap these points around. Actually, I was going to talk about spice it up, but okay, let's do this one next. if all else fails, take a leap in the dark and trust yourself, and don't be afraid to start to take the conversation off into weird areas and to start to talk about fairly obscure stuff that that you're interested in. Okay, now I'll give you an example of this. There was one time I was having a conversation with this girl, and she was from, where was she from? Kazakhstan? No, not Kazakhstan. Where's Kim Kardashian? Armenia.
Okay.
So I'm talking to this. I was talking to this girl from Armenia, and she was very sort of like a sort of former Soviet Union type girl, very sort of studious looking, and very kind of like slightly eccentric. And girls like that, they always tend to be sort of quite cultured and quite literary and all this kind of thing. And for some reason, and I can't remember why this happened or why it came up, we ended up talking about Dostoevsky. And we ended up talking about the book, which is the one I recommended to you, the Underground Man.
Mm-hmm.
And she hadn't heard of the Underground Man. So I was talking to her about the Underground Man and why I thought it was really good. And then I got my phone out and I showed her on Amazon the book and blah, blah, blah. Now, you would never go to a YouTube, well, apart from this one, you'd never go to a YouTube video or, like a blog, and they would say, do you know what, guys? If you want to really like charm the girls, Dostoevsky's your man. Do you know what I mean? Like, and particularly, you want to cite the Underground Man because that really gets them going.
Do
you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. I mean that nobody would ever advise that you do that. Okay, but and here's the point: like, you need to get to a point where obviously you've got to read your audience. And you've got to get a sense of what they might be into, and and blah blah blah. But also, I think it's important not to be unafraid to take the conversation where you want to take it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not like talking about Dostoevsky, but equally it could be anything else. It could be anything that's sort of like outside of the normal realm of this is a guy chatting up a girl. Mm-hmm. I think it's good and creative and actually very, very healthy to take it into other directions during the initial interaction. Because for a start, it's quite cool to show that you've got other layers to you and you're not just this kind of one-dimensional dude who's chatting her up. But secondly, you also want to show that you've got the frame that you want to talk about what you think is cool. You want to talk about what you want to talk about, and you're going to lead the conversation in that direction.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right about that. A lot of guys are afraid of that because they think their hobbies are nerdy and things like that. But as I've said before, you'd be surprised how many girls are into nerdy hobbies. I mean, don't be a geek about it, but be at least secure in yourself enough, in your own, that you want to bring it up, or it comes up at some point in the conversation and you're like, well, yes, I enjoy that. Have you heard of it? And I tend to notice that when girls like you, they just say yes, or at least like they've either heard of it or they're very interested in it, and she goes with you. Like, how do you know you have the frame? Everything you like, she is interested in, no matter what. Well,
yeah, exactly. And the other thing is that women will often complain because they will say that guys are very shallow, and it's like, and there's that meme, isn't there, that people share on Instagram and Facebook sometimes, which says something like, I don't want shallow conversation. I want to talk about dreams and life and death and the meaning of life and all that kind of thing. And that may well be true, but try doing that at the Cancun pool party. Do you know what I mean? It's not so easy just to walk up to somebody and say, so what do you think about the meaning of existence?
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
I mean, you could try that. You could try that, and it might even work. But it's sort of difficult. Like, on the one hand, people will say, I hate small talk. I don't want small talk. I want deep talk. And, I think we all kind of agree on that in a way. I mean, small talk is, in the main, is pretty banal and shallow. But at the same time, unless you know somebody quite well, it's kind of hard to get to the deeper talking off the bat. But I think that what you can do, Because when you think about a chatting up situation, like a day game approach or something like that, really you think about it as being very sort of, all right, love, you look kind of cute, my mum warned me about girls like you. All right, how about we exchange numbers, get a cheeky drink? You think about it as being very like surface level and sort of like, but it doesn't have to be. You can take it outside of that as well. You can start talking about Dostoevsky. You can start talking about art. You can start talking about, classical music or whatever. As long as you remember underneath it all, there's got to be that flirtation and there's got to be that man to woman polarity.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, again, don't be afraid to bring it up. Don't be afraid to bring it up. And that whole meme of, I don't want shallow conversation, I want deep conversation. Yeah, tell me again how much you talk with your girlfriends about literature instead of latte macchiato frappuccinos or that thing on Netflix. I'm listening. I'm not seeing it.
It's slightly hypocritical, that like a lot of things, but yeah. Anyway, that's just and I've, because sometimes as well. I mean, if you're doing a lot of approaches and you're getting into these, I mean, the reality is that after a while, these types of conversations can get pretty bloody boring because there are only really so many things that you're going to say, or so many like conversational avenues you can go down. Because essentially, what are you doing? You're walking up, you're saying, I find you attractive. Here are some assumptions about you. Here's some stuff I think about you. She's coming back with some stuff. You're bantering a little bit, and then you're saying, "How about we exchange numbers and we'll go for a drink?" I mean, it's very formulaic. Okay, so I would say don't be afraid to just break out of that sometimes and just take it where you want to take it, and just take the risk, because sometimes the risk really pays off. And if the risk pays off, she's going to like you. She's going to be even more into you than she would have been otherwise.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially when it's something she already knows before you, and then you have something to talk about. And she'll remember you as the guy she actually had a conversation with about a topic she usually can't talk with somebody about. I mean, we're naming Dostoevsky, and that's not something really popular with the kids these days.
Well, I don't know. I mean, are there not Dostoevsky channels on TikTok? I'm not.
I don't think there are. Can you imagine, like the brothers?
I might start one. It'd be good. Good content.
Would be a niche in the market. I think you'd have Jordan B. Peterson if your first follower, though.
Mary Aaron Clary as well.
Like he knows Russian literature.
So the next point, which is what we're going to come to before then, is spicing it up, okay? And by that, I mean dropping in flirtatious comments and little double entendres and things like that. Because, and this segues actually quite well from the Dostoevsky thing, because like it's all right to, it's fine to do that. Like I said before, you also want to be sort of like, you also need to maintain the premise that this is man to woman, that this is flirtation, that this is, you're not just going to be, it's not going to become a dry academic discussion either. So you've got to keep like dropping in little things, and you can sort of like, sometimes you could just cut the thread, as they used to say entirely. You could just sort of like, you're looking at her and she's talking about Dostoevsky, and then you can say, and then you can just stop and go, you've got really pretty eyes, and you're just staring her in the eye. And things like that, which is a sort of a direct statement of interest, helps to shake the thing up. It's almost like the NLP thing, it's a pattern break, because you're going along and you're talking about like, oh, these artists and, this museum and blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, and then you click in with something which demonstrates that you are attracted to her on a fundamental level. You're sort of breaking it up, right? And that's, I think, what you need to do. You don't want to allow the conversation to become too dry and too sort of formulaic.
100% agree. Although I'm not very good at it verbally, I'm way better at it physically. Like these small kino instances. And what I mean by that, for people who don't know what kino is kinesthetics, like you initiate touch. What I want to do is like bring in high fives, things like that. Spontaneously tap her on the shoulder or touch her on the arm a bit, things like that, and see where that goes. Like, is she allowing you to keep your hand there, or at least not? How do I say that? She's moving away from you. She's moving more forward to you. What I always love to do was just give a high five and hold it myself and see what she does. And like most of the times, they wouldn't retract back either. And I just act like it was the most normal thing in the world that you keep a high five that long. But that's how you know when she's also interested in you physically. Not necessarily saying she'll jump into the sack with you right away, but there's interest. There is a curiosity, so to say. Verbally, not so very good at it. Maybe I'm a bit too blunt with it because I have done the pattern break, but I'm very assertive, and I just out of nowhere, when she's talking to those things and you've been at it for a while, I just pattern break and say, well, you know what? This is all interesting and all that, but I just think you should kiss me right now.
Exactly. And that kind of thing, I mean, that may be a little bit bold for a daytime approach when you just met. But
for daytime, it pretty is.
Yeah, but that kind of thing is really gold because, again, you need to bring it back to the fundamental premise. I think actually Todd V calls it premise, which is that this is a man-to-woman interaction. Okay. Now, a mistake that you can make in talking about something that you are both mutually interested in, because sometimes what will happen is you'll happen upon a topic that you're both interested in. And this can backfire because one time, and this was many years ago, I met a girl in London and it turned out that she was a big Depeche Mode fan. Now, I've made no secret of my allegiance to that particular band. And I think they just released an album at that time, which I'd just been listening to, and she had as well. And so we ended up talking about Depeche Mode. And then one thing led to another. I think we went for a drink or a coffee or something. We ended up going for a bite to eat. And the whole evening, and this was my naivety and, lack of proper game, we were just talking about Depeche Mode and how great Depeche Mode were and what about this, what about that, blah, blah, blah. Great evening, loads of fun. Interesting, good to meet a fellow, fan and everything. But then at the end of the night, we exchanged numbers, peck on the cheek. I said, I'll drop you a message and maybe we can hang out another time. Nothing. Crickets. Never. I messaged her, never heard from that girl again. So the lesson from that is don't talk about Depeche Mode when you meet somebody.
Don't listen to Depeche Mode anyway.
Yeah, but seriously, I mean, the lesson there is that just having a mutual interest is not enough because you've got to spike the attraction as well.
I agree. And that tends to be not necessarily debate, but a difference of opinion on that. Some would say, don't build the rapport. Others would say, do build the rapport. I'm a bit of in the middle with it. Again, like when a girl likes you, you don't have to build rapport that much. But like when all is said and done and you're both in bed together, it's nice to like have something in common other than, well, you look less hot than 5 minutes ago.
Yes.
What are you up to in your daily life?
Yeah. I mean, yes. Yes. I mean, I think that some rapport is good for sure. And I mean, if you hit on a topic that you're both interested in, like you both like a particular band or writer or, whatever it is, like sport or place to hang out, that's great. And you can talk about that because there's a subtle balance here because you need material to talk about, right? Because like I've said before, you've got to just keep things going for a period of time. Certainly during the approach, and even a bit during like the first date and everything. You've got to keep the wheels in motion. Otherwise, there's a danger of her just going, all right, thanks very much, see you later, bye. So you need some material to talk about. At the same time, you have to ensure that it's never forgotten that this is actually basically you're talking to her because you're attracted to her and you would like things to proceed in that direction. And the danger is if you start talking about a particular topic that you're both into too much, then it becomes all about that topic and the original purpose gets lost, which is like, I want to get to know you and date you and take things further.
Okay, now I get you. I get what you mean. That people that guys get lost in the topic instead of focusing on getting the attraction to spike. Like it's nice that she has the same hobbies or interest in you as you, but there's a goal with this conversation. Like it's nice to build rapport, but you want to be again the lover in this situation.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to be honest, shared interests don't really matter that much, particularly not for something casual. And I would argue even in a relationship, they don't really matter that much. But certainly for something casual, the fact that you're both into Drake or something is I mean, you can play it. You can play it while you're, making love, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't really. Well, I don't have to imagine. I've already. But
really? Drake.
Well, mate, you got to work with what you know.
Well, that's true. I mean, you're well more experienced with degeneracy than I am, so why not?
Is Drake degenerate? I suppose.
No, the opposite of. That's why I was like, really, Drake, really?
I don't know. Yeah, well, my girlfriend's a big Drake fan, so that's why I'm mentioning it. I think a lot of these ladies who are in that sort of like 20s age group,
Ed Sheeran, things like that.
Oh, mate, I draw the line somewhere.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I think it'd be hard to maintain a pre-epic state if I was listening to
phallus movement.
Exactly. I think that would be kind of tricky, but I mean, Drake's done some good ones. He's done a few bangers. But anyway, we digress. So yeah, don't get bogged down in your personal interests because that's not really germane to the thing. It's fine to chat about it, throw it out there, whatever, but you've got to maintain the flirtation. You've got to maintain the man to woman vibe. And then the final point, the seventh point, which just kind of rounds everything off really, is that you need to remember that the more confidently you talk about whatever you want to talk about, the better she's likely to receive it. So that is to say, I mean, and I've done both daytime approaching and nighttime approaching, and obviously you've got first dates when you've just met them from a dating app, and that's another sort of thing where you've got to improvise a little bit on the spot. You've got to fight. The onus is going to be on you to find stuff to talk about and to keep the conversation going. And if you can't do that, then you're going to lose opportunities, right? Because I'm sure we've all experienced this, but from the classic, you walk up to the guy like, "Hey, you're cute. Do you like stuff?" From that situation, and she's like, "Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Goodbye." You get that, or you go on a date with her. Say you meet her on Tinder, and then you go on a date, and you're like, "Yeah, so
Tinder."
Yeah. Then that date's going to fall flat. So dating apps don't get you out of this problem. They might get you a meetup, but they don't get you out of this problem of having to have a conversation. You're going to have to find something to talk about. Now, we've gone through some ways of doing that, which is like making assumptions about her and sometimes throwing in a wild card as well. Like I said before, sometimes just throwing something out there and seeing if it sticks, because sometimes it will. Sometimes you'll say, "Oh man, I love going to the Tate Modern," and she'll be like, "Oh, so do I. That's fantastic." And then you've got a subject. You're like, "Woohoo! I've got a subject to talk about." But regardless, the more confidently you talk about whatever you want to talk about, the more likely she's going to receive it well, because you want her to be buying into your frame. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of what it comes down to. So she might be a massive Drake fan, for example, like we're just saying. But if you go in there and say, "Listen, I think Drake's rubbish. I love classical music. I love 19th century piano music." Well, what are you going to do? Shoot me? Do you know what I mean? Do you realize how much of a boss Rachmaninoff was? He emigrated to New York City. He was the man. I don't care about this bloody Drake. What about I'm exaggerating for effect, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you want to be confident enough and passionate enough about the stuff that you're into that you draw her into that. Okay. And
Mozart was a G, died in the damn streets.
He was born for the he was meant for the streets.
Yeah, well, he died in them. I mean, lived as he went from the streets.
Yeah, exactly.
Effing G.
Yeah. So do you often throw in about your model boats when you're out and about?
Oh man, the thing is, and I talked to Tom Torero about this.
Would you like to come back and see my collection of model ships?
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't do that with my model ships once. I did that with my former Pokemon card collection. I am not kidding, and she actually went with me. She was wearing red lingerie. Ask me how I know. No, but seriously, it wasn't even strange looking back on it. Like, there was this band playing in a pub nearby, a Beatles cover band, and they were American, and there was this hot blonde girl, and for some odd reason, American girls love me. Could be the accent, could be the looks, I don't know. But for some reason, that was just easy target for me. And we started chatting a bit and blah, blah, blah. And we apparently were around the same age. And she had a wallet or something in the shape of a Pokeball with the same colors. Like, oh, you're into Pokemon? Here, talking about topics that you're both interested in. She's like, yeah, I grew up with it and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I have the first 2 generations on card. Still have them, the trading cards. She's like, no way. I'm like, yeah, well, I live around the corner. So she left her boyfriend, who was a guitar player in a Beatles cover band, to go with a guy she just met to look at his Pokemon card collection, all the while ending up French kissing each other and feeling each other up. I mean, what?
Terrible. This is why the West is failing, Jack. This is the kind of degeneracy. But I would say that probably the problem lies in having an American Beatles covers band, because I think there's something very deeply wrong about that in the first place.
The thing she admitted to, because, well, we were French kissing each other, and I asked her, like, stupid me, by the way, back then. I asked her, like, you're cheating on your boyfriend. Like, what is, tell me the story about that. Straight from the horse's mouth. Yeah, he takes me out to travels and he buys me things, but he's just not exciting. And, well, you're not the first guy I cheat with while traveling with him. I'm like, wow.
Was he in the band and they were traveling together?
Yeah, he was in the band. Right. Like, she was traveling on his expense. That's pretty insane.
I mean, I tell you what, like, because people complain about, so-called red pill content or whatever you want to call it, but the truth of the matter is that you don't even need to watch the videos. Just like go and interact with women, and you'll get it all. It's a. But there you go. That's life, guys. I mean, we're all just human animals. We're all here. We all want the best deal we can get, men and women, and that's just how things are. So we shouldn't be surprised, really. So look, we've got about 9 minutes left, guys. Any questions that you've got now, put them in the chat. If it's about what we're talking about, this thing about keeping conversations going, put them in the chat. Anything else you want to discuss, whack it into the chat and we'll try to get round them. But there are a few bits and pieces that we've got already to have a look at. So Moan has got a couple of questions, actually. So the last one he put, I think, was... or his observation. I found girls purposely quiet on a date just to see how frequently you jump into the silence. If you talk more than her, that means you're losing the frame. So that's an interesting one. What do you think about that?
Yes and no. And what I mean by that, you're the guy, you initiate. But it comes back to conversational skills. I don't know if you've heard this one, but he who asks the questions leads the conversation. And I have noticed that some girls fall quiet, and I have purposely shut my mouth at that point just to see what a reaction is. Because, I mean, women talk way more than men. So if she's all of a sudden quiet, there's probably something up. So I just act like it's the natural course of the day, so to say. And then out of nowhere, they start talking again. I also tend to do it to see how interested she is. Like, is she going to ask me questions? Is she just as invested as I am in this date? But in the beginning, you don't need to focus that much on it because the conversation needs a start. You need to start up the conversation. So maybe like later on in the conversation, I would see it's maybe a frame test, but don't take it with a grain of salt. Like, don't be like, turn the tisms, as Ryan likes to say, down to like 0 for this one, because you're still normal human beings. Like when Troy and I are in a room and Troy is quiet, I'm not going to think, Troy is testing me to see if I'm really red pill aware enough. No, like we've never met in real life. You need to start up a conversation. Same with girls. Start up a conversation. Of course. Yeah. That's my...
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a bit of a danger with this, and I'll tell you what it is, right? Because one time there's a guy called 60 Years of Challenge who's a really interesting game writer. He's got a few PDFs that you can find. I think on Google or whatever. If you Google 60 Years of Challenge, he's got some really interesting PDFs, including there's one called Relationship Roulette. about long-term relationships. And there's another one about, but his whole thing was he was saying like, guys, you need to do less. Don't try to talk too much. Because his whole thing was like, just a man and woman coming together, it sort of ignites, that chemistry happens itself. You need to be near to her. You need to be still. You need to be quiet. And she's going to feel that vibe and you're going to feel that vibe. And it's going to kind of it's just going to kind of coalesce by itself. And there's sort of something in it. And like, this is a guy, I mean, his relationship roulette book is really, really good. But this, I'm not sure about this because I met a Russian girl through day game in Berlin. It's a few years ago. And, I was texting her. I got her to come out on the date. We met for a date. We met for a coffee or something like that. And I just read this 60 Years of Challenge thing. So I was like, right, I'm just going to say less and I'm just going to let it happen. And so we're there for this coffee and she's kind of sitting there saying, and I'm sort of like,
staring deeply into
and she's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And in the end, she kind of went, look, you're just trying to be really sexy by not saying much and that. It's like, I don't know what, I don't know where you're coming from with this, and I'm like, really?
How did that turn out?
Well, I mean, I never saw her again.
Oh,
so I mean, it's a tricky one because I think you don't want to be like a little schoolboy, like, oh my God, blah, 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 blah. Oh, can I talk about this to please you? Can I talk about that to please you? You don't want to jump through hoops, but at the same time, the onus is still on you to talk about something and to keep the bloody thing going, because otherwise she's just going to feel like that was a bit awkward. And if she associates that feeling with you, she's unlikely to want to take things further or see you again.
Yep. It's kind of basic human conversation skills, I guess. If you're pulling teeth, for people who don't know the phrase, what I mean by that is if you have to put too much effort into it just to get a reaction, just go away, just go home. I mean, play video games or whatever, because she's not going to be interested no matter how many questions you ask. But don't let that scare you away from actually having a human interaction. And that's what I meant with the whole take it with a grain of salt, turn the tisms down to zero. What do you do with a basic human conversation? You ask a question. But later on, like 30 minutes, maybe even an hour into the date, and you're noticing she's not asking you anything, she's mostly quiet, and you have to put all the effort forward, then it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a balance, right? Because on the one hand, it's like people will always say, you don't want to show too much intent. You don't want to be a dancing monkey. You don't want to be trying to impress her too much. And all of those things are true. But if you don't do anything, she's kind of going to walk off. So, it's like, I think you've got to do it. You've got to lead the conversation, create the conversation, lead the conversation, but you've just got to do it on your own terms. So you're not sitting there going like, oh, I'm such a supplicating little, whatever. You'll say, well, no, this is what I'm into. What do you think about this? What do you think? And you can be challenging with her. It's like, I like Rachmaninoff. What do you think about that? What you going to do? Shoot me? Like you could be challenging with her and do it in a way that is not sort of like needy or weak, but you've still got to provide some material because otherwise the whole thing's just going to go down the drain. Yeah. We're coming up to the hour, but there's a point here from Facundo Rosada Ayastaran. And he says, how can we navigate the sexual market when most women nowadays lie, even about STDs, and create terrible drama? We want the company, but we won't find a quality woman. It all boils down to testing them. I don't know. What do you think? You're searching for a quality woman, aren't you?
I have given up that hope a long time ago. Okay. Let's dissect this one real quick because we've got other things to do. Okay. Most women lie nowadays, even about STDs. Well, first of all, don't do it without a rubber. Like, control the birth always. Like, I don't care if you had a vasectomy or whatever. always wear a rubber. I don't care. Most women lie, of course. Ever heard of makeup? Ever heard of push-up bras? Of course they lie. Create terrible drama. All up to you. They create the drama you allow. A woman doesn't do anything you won't allow her to do. Simple. We want the company, but we won't find a quality woman. Quality woman doesn't exist. A woman fits the qualities you hold to your standards. And that's it. And she either falls in line with that or she doesn't. There's your quality woman, the one you create.
I think some of the premises here are a little bit, I'm not sure I agree with all of them. I mean, when they lie, well, I mean, there are degrees of these things. I'm not sure about the STDs thing. I mean, I've not really experienced that myself. I mean, create drama, well, yes, but that's part of relationship management.
You should be the one creating drama. That's way more fun.
Exactly. We won't find a quality woman. Well, I would dispute that. I think there are girls who are who I mean, it's such a cliche, isn't it? That's why I always put a trademark sign on Twitter next to quality woman, because it's just like such a, it's become like a meme. But there are women who are of higher quality. Well, I mean, I don't even like using the term, but there are women that fit more the description of quality woman than others. I mean, they are out there. I don't believe that it's the case that they're all gone and the West is dying. It's I don't think that's true. But at the same time, we're all human beings. We're all flawed. We've all got good and bad in us, and so men and women, and that's just how it is.
I mean, it depends what you mean with quality woman. Like, a quality woman is a woman with a low notch count. Well, good luck finding one around 18 who doesn't have a high notch count. Okay. Maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, but to keep your hopes down a bit. Don't get your hopes up on that. Other than that, what do you want? You want her to clean? Well, if you get into a relationship with her, let that be your boundary. Let that be one of the things she has to live. How do you say that? Help me out. My English is failing. Or at least that is something you want in a woman, that when you go out to work, she cleans. And that's something that's a boundary you have. That is one of your, how do you say that? That's one of your preconditions. Yeah, preconditions. I mean, again, the quality woman is made, and it's made by whatever qualities you deem high value.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the thing at the end boils down to testing them. That's probably reasonable, because like we were saying before, like you do want to. I mean, particularly if you're talking about entering into something that's a bit of a longer term thing, you do want to be. They call it qualifying. You do want to be like, I'm a guy with certain standards, and I want to know because there's only room for really one girlfriend in my life, or what, that may not be true, but you know what I'm saying? This is what you're presenting to her. There's only room for one partner in my life, and I've got certain things that I want for that person. So I need to see if you measure up, because what you don't want to be is like desperate Derek, who's like, yeah, whatever, I'll take you, and she's got all of these obvious flaws. So yeah, you want to test her a bit, or at least you want to qualify her. You want to be sort of like appraising her to see if she fits your criteria, which I think is reasonable. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I do that with friends, even.
Yeah.
I mean, put aside the quality woman for a bit. I do that with everybody in my life. I don't want to hang around with losers. So why should I let the woman in my life, or women in my life, be losers?
Yeah.
And okay, different standards, of course.
Yeah.
But the whole testing thing doesn't come down to just women. It comes down to everybody.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because if you want to be a
high quality,
I think he just broke his internet connection with that.
Guy,
you felt.
I don't know what
the connection broke.
I disappeared. Oh, okay. That was the internet company realized that my lack of high quality and they took us off air. But yeah, you want to be somebody who's got standards, and that needs to come through in the way that you interact with people for sure. So yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. But anyway, listen, it's been an amazing stream. Wanted to keep this one quite well on the hour today, and we have more or less done that. So I hope you guys got something out of that. A few conversational gambits. Jack, do you want to tell the guys where they can find you? Anything you've got coming up?
Link to my channel is already in the chat. I do narrations for various audiobooks in the Manosphere. I have done the Genomics audiobook. You can find that on my Twitter at Jack Napier Knows, and everything you need to know is on there. So link to the channel is in there, and Twitter at Jack Napier Knows. Fantastic stuff. On that note, Mr. Black Label Logic is actually going to be on this channel tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. EST. That's 4:30 p.m. GMT UK time, but 11:30 a.m. EST. Myself and Black Label Logic, and we're going to be talking about degeneracy and how we can push forward the agenda of degeneracy in the modern world, because I think it's being swept away. So we need to obviously look at that. But no, we'll be talking about like that, but also dating, game, etc., etc. So come along tomorrow and do have your questions at the ready if you want to put them to me or Mr. Black Label Logic. It's going to be a lot of fun. Good stuff, guys. All right, thanks ever so much for tuning in. Thank you very much, Jack, for coming along. And thanks for having me.
Indeed. And we will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.